Romeo and Juliet is not destroyed by love. It is destroyed by speed.
Yes, the lazy reading turns this into pure romance. But the play keeps showing something harsher. Everything important happens too fast for anyone to think, test, or stop it.
So, the real pressure in the play is not just family hatred, it is velocity.
Exactly. Attraction is instant. Plans are instant. Violence is instant. Punishment is instant. Even the ending depends on messages and reactions, moving too fast in some places and not fast enough in others.
Start with the thing people smooth over. Romeo does not arrive as some fixed, faithful lover.
Not even close. At the start, he is miserable over Rosaline. He talks as if that feeling fills his whole world. Then he sees Juliet at the Capulet feast, and Rosaline is effectively gone at once. That shift is not deep constancy.
Which matters because the usual school version makes Romeo sound steady and sincere from line 1.
But the play shows a boy who falls hard and fast. On one night, he is pining for one woman. Before that night is over, he is scaling a wall for another. If you miss that speed, you miss the danger built into his character.
And Juliet does not slow the action down either.
No, she is sharper than Romeo, but she moves quickly too. They meet, flirt, kiss, declare themselves, and by the next day, they are pushing for marriage. That is not a long-tested bond. It is a decision made under pressure and in secrecy.
And the marriage is absurdly fast when you lay it out plainly.
It really is. They meet at the party that night. The balcony scene follows. By the next day, Juliet sends the nurse for news. Romeo has arranged the wedding with Friar Lawrence, and they are married that afternoon. The whole thing races past the point where any adult could properly assess it.
Friar Lawrence does hesitate for a moment.
He does, but not enough. He sees the risk. He even notes how suddenly Romeo has switched from Rosalind to Juliet. Then he agrees anyway, hoping the marriage might end the feud. That is a strategic gamble made in a rush, and it fails.
So speed is not just a trait of the teenagers. The adults get pulled into it and start making quick fixes.
Right. The nurse carries messages. The friar improvises. Capulet changes the marriage date to Paris with brutal speed after Tybalt dies. No one creates stability. They all react, and reaction is exactly what this plot feeds on.
That brings us to violence, because this play does not drift into tragedy. It gets shoved there.
By Mercutio and Tybalt, above all. Romeo has just secretly married Juliet, so he tries to avoid fighting Tybalt, but he does not explain why. Mercutio steps in, the duel spins out fast, and Mercutio is mortally wounded under Romeo's arm. Then Romeo snaps and kills Tybalt almost immediately.
That sequence is the hinge of the whole play.
Yes, because after that, events stop being risky and become catastrophic. Tybalt dead means Romeo is banished. Banishment means the marriage must stay hidden. Hidden marriage means Juliet is trapped when Capulet orders her to marry Paris. One burst of street violence accelerates every later crisis.
And notice the timing again. There is barely any gap between wound, rage, revenge, and sentence.
That is the point. Mercutio dies quickly. Romeo kills quickly. The prince judges quickly. The play keeps removing the space where someone might step back and say, stop, think, wait.
Then, the ending takes that pattern and turns it lethal.
Juliet is threatened with a second marriage on a tight deadline. The friar responds with a desperate plan on a tight deadline. She drinks the potion alone, under pressure, with almost no room to test another option. This is not calm planning. It is emergency management.
And then the mechanics of haste finish the job.
Exactly. The letter explaining the fake death does not reach Romeo. Balthazar reaches him first with the bare fact that Juliet is dead. Romeo does not investigate. He does not wait. He buys poison at once and rides to Verona. In the tomb, Juliet wakes only minutes too late. The margin is tiny, and that is why it hurts.
So when people say the tragedy comes from fate, that can get a bit lazy.
It can, because fate becomes an excuse not to read the chain of decisions. The play is full of rushed choices, compressed time, and people acting before thought catches up. Fate may frame the story, but speed does the damage.
Which also changes how we see Romeo and Juliet themselves. They are not statues of perfect love. They are young people making irreversible choices at dangerous speed.
Yes, and that is why the play still lands. Not because it is soft, but because it is brutal about momentum. Once the action starts racing, almost nobody can control it, including the people who think they are helping.
So if you flatten the play into romance, you miss the engine.
And the engine is speed. Romeo shifts fast. The marriage happens fast. Violence turns fast into disaster. The ending closes before correction can arrive. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy of people moving too quickly for the truth to catch them.